All right, guys, so we have with us the all-new Voigtlander 28mm f2.8 Skopar spherical lens versus the Leica 28mm f2.8 Elmarit latest generation. Which one will reign supreme? Check out these sample images. Looking on YouTube, compression, everything else, they look almost exactly the same. Only when you go into Lightroom or Capture One are you going to notice the difference. And I will tell you, the Elmarit does pull ahead. Better sharpness at f2.8, better micro contrast, and it's a bit brighter. For whatever reason, it's a bit brighter. Now, just to let you guys know, I'm not using a Leica M adapter, so I'm not getting any sort of lens correction in this camera system. This is a keep-on adapter. So when I was testing both of these out here on this SL2S reporter, they're reading exactly the same. Yes, you get the close focusing at 0.5 meters versus 0.7 meters, but I felt like this wasn't as sharp at f2.8. Now, again, we're manually focusing, so, take in some user error, but when I really dialed in focusing, focus peaking, I found this wasn't quite as sharp. I mean, you really have to pixel peep, guys, to see the difference. You really, really do. If budget's no concern, you want the best 28 f2.8, you go for the Elmarit. If budget is a concern, this is not a bad option. But let's talk a little bit more about this lens for a second here. This is a really lightweight lens coming in 106 grams. The Type 1 is a little bit heavier. I think it's around 140 plus grams. And the Elmarit is 176 grams, thereabouts. So this is gonna be a noticeable difference in terms of lightness. Now, in terms of size, check this thing out for a second. This is really compact here. This is very, very, very compact. And it's got the lens hood on it. By the way, a lens hood's included in the box with Voigtlander. How about that for a change? This is the lens hood. See, nice little ring there. It is all metal, very lightweight. I think it's made out of aluminum. It feels like it. Screws right in there. 39mm filter diameter on this. So that's it. Look at that. Beautiful chrome color onto it. Mounted onto the M6 here. My 0.85 TTL. Love this camera, by the way. I have a beautiful story to tell you about this camera, and I will do that one day because I got to dive into some more film stuff. It matches perfectly with this, and it's got a little bit more of a modern design versus the Type 1, which it looks a little bit more vintage, but the Type 1 does feel a little bit better made. Now, in terms of the focus tab here, this feels really nice, very easy to focus. But this aperture ring leaves a little bit to be desired. What I mean by that, it's very loose. It's almost, there are clicks, but they're so subtle you can barely tell the difference. Case in point, this is definitely much more precise. And I was curious why Voigtlander went with this design philosophy on this, because usually their aperture rings are not that bad. This is very light, very easy to knock out at f2.8 or f5.6, wherever you're shooting at. So I would say when you're walking around taking photos with this lens, double check your aperture just to make sure, because this is very easy. But I do like the grooves right here, so it does make it very easy to move. That's nice. But with that said, it looks good. It's not that bad considering the price point. And also, you get two different lens caps for this. So you get a push-on lens cap here when you have the hood on it. That comes in the box, as well as a pinch cap as well if you want to take this off. And I didn't notice any flaring. Now, obviously, I was using the lens hood most of the time, and I would recommend it because it's so tiny. It doesn't really make much of a difference. If you look at this, it's not a bad design. It's just a bit plain in my personal opinion. And Voigtlander's done some really cool designs as of late. And I think the Type 1, it really shines in that department versus the Type 2 here. But I think for the more modern M cameras out there that people have, like the M10, M11, or even if you want to throw this onto the M6, for example, it's not that bad. It just doesn't scream wow to me. So with that said, let's talk about where this fits in the marketplace here. All right. So the reason I went with the 28 Elmarit over the Summicron was price point. I am not a big 28mm shooter, to be frank with you. So I use it as and when I need it, more environmental, architecture, landscape, or I want to capture, let's say I'm in like streets of Japan or Europe where they're a little bit more closed in. and I want to capture more of that depth or more of that scenery, then I'm going to use 28 millimeters. Now, in Singapore, the way that our streets are designed, or maybe even America for that matter, a little bit longer, a little bit wider, 35 millimeters might be your go-to focal length. Everybody's got their preference. There's no right or wrong. But the main reason I went with this versus the Summicron was price point. There's a significant difference between the Elmarit and the Cron. But when it comes over to the Voigtlander, it's roughly $150, maybe $200 difference depending on your market. It could even be less depending on the camera store that you're purchasing this from the Ultron, which is an f2 versus the 2.8. Now the Ultron is a longer lens, a little bit heavier, but it's still f2 versus 2.8. And Voigtlander is saying it's the same optical formula in the Ultron that is here in the Skopar lens. So I don't know. I personally, if I not really tight on budget, I would go for the f2. You get a little bit more depth of field, a little bit more light coming into the lens. So if you want to take in any sort of environmental portraits, then it's going to give you that little bit more depth that may help. I mean, it's not a big difference, but there is a difference. Maybe they're priced too close together. I mean, it's tough to say. I wasn't wowed by it, but then again, I'm not really wowed by 28 millimeter lenses anyway, minus the Q3, which is a 1.7, which I appreciate because it also has macro capability. So it's very versatile. I don't know. I think for the price point, I might just go for the Ultron and call it a day. F2 and versus 2.8 for like $100 plus $200 difference. I don't know. Tough decision to make. I'd love to hear from you guys though. Let me know your thoughts on this. Which would you go for? Obviously at the beginning of this video, we're comparing the Elmarit to this lens and they're very similar to each other. The Elmarit will win, of course, but again, you're paying a premium versus this. But to the Ultron, which one would you get? Love to hear from you guys. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And by the way, I want to thank Rice Ball Photography for allowing me to test drive this lens. You guys are awesome. Once again, I'm not paid, I'm not sponsored. They are the distributors for Voigtlander here in Singapore. So anything Voigtlander you want, come on by their shop. They give very good pricing, very aggressive pricing, and sometimes even better than B&H Photo and those other ones out there. So if you're in the market in Singapore, do check them out. With that, guys, if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, more content coming your way. Thanks again for the support, and I will chat to you soon.